Paige's Guide to HR. I'm Paige, and this is, in fact, my guide to HR. I currently have an APHR certificate, so that means I am a certified associate professional in human resources, and I'm currently working as an HR executive assistant at a small business. And I'm so passionate about human resources that I decided to start this podcast. And as you can see, this is the very first episode. And I thought, what better way to kick off an HR podcast than by talking about employee onboarding? So I'm sure if you're studying HR or if you've worked anywhere in corporate, you've heard about the term onboarding or employee onboarding. So what is it and why is it so important? Well, have you ever showed up to your first day of work and you have no idea where to go? You have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea who to report to, and you get there and maybe your desk isn't even set up yet. And how does that make you feel? It doesn't make you feel very valued as an employee. You've probably spent weeks preparing for this first day, and the company you're working for didn't even prepare at all. And it seems, in fact, that many companies are lacking in their employee onboarding processes. I'm going to be referencing a book many times in this episode. It's called Never Lose an Employee Again by Joey Coleman. And there are some pretty telling statistics in this book about how organizations use their onboarding processes. In fact, 76% of HR leaders felt that onboarding practices were underutilized at their organization, and 36% of organizations lack any structured onboarding practices. So then why is onboarding so important if companies barely use any onboarding practices? Well, it's because people who are onboarded well tend to stay with the company more, and it increases employee retention significantly. And employee retention is very important because the cost of a new hire is about 3 to 4 times that position's salary. And here's another statistic from Joey Coleman's book. In 2021, the cost of turnover for employers in the US alone exceeded $700 billion. And I'm sure some of that was from COVID, but a lot of that still could have been prevented. And one of the best ways to prevent so much turnover is by using good onboarding techniques. To quote Joey Coleman again, a study found that organizations with a strong onboarding process increased their productivity by more than 70% and improved new hire retention by 82%. And 69% of employees who categorize their onboarding program as strong stay with the organization for a minimum of 3 years. So, if you're listening to this and you're an HR professional and you want to increase employee retention, onboarding is one of the best ways to do it. Refining your onboarding process is significant to increasing employee retention, and that's why onboarding is so important. It's because it saves the company a great amount of money, and it makes employees happier, and it makes them want to stay with you longer. And we all know how expensive recruiting can be. There's so many recruiting costs, and it's just easier to keep the employees that you already have. So how would you define onboarding? It's basically the process of integrating new hires into the company and providing them all the tools that they're going to need throughout their career. An important thing to mention is the difference between onboarding and orientation. Onboarding is more of a long-term thing, while orientation is a short-term thing. Orientation is usually something that just happens the first day, and it's just there to provide essential company information and give introductions to the team. So it's just the first day, but onboarding is more long-term. And if you study onboarding or if you study HR, you're going to hear a bunch of times that the first 90 days or the first 90 to 100 days is the most important time in an employee's career with you for onboarding. Those 90 to 100 days really determine whether or not an employee is going to stay with you or be happy with where they're working. So think of it as onboarding is an ongoing process and doesn't stop after the first couple of days, and orientation is usually a first day, first week kind of thing. So I've talked on and on about how effective onboarding is the greatest thing in the world. So what are effective onboarding strategies? So we're going to be focusing on what to do during those first 90 days. It's important to realize that onboarding starts way before the employee's first day. Before the employee's first day, I'd say a week before, just send a welcome email. And that welcome email could include the necessary paperwork they need. Anything that they would need to fill out before they come in on the first day is a good thing to include in that welcome email so that when they come in on the first day, they're not immediately bogged down with all this paperwork. And I would include a detailed list of what the person will be doing that first day. Just write up a schedule. Make it very structured so that the employee feels secure and they know what they're going to walk into on their very first day. If you think about it, the thing that people really fear the most besides like public speaking is uncertainty and change. When starting a new job, they're going to be uncertain about a lot of things, and it's also a big change for that person. So when onboarding an employee, you want to mitigate as much of that stress as you possibly can. You can't control the fact that your new employee is going through a significant change in their life, but you can turn that into a good change. And what you can control is how much uncertainty that person feels coming into your organization. So really good onboarding techniques leave nothing to the imagination. The employee has no uncertainty going into their first day. They know everything that they're doing. Not that they'll know like the job immediately from the first day, but they know what they will be doing there on the first day. And when they actually start that first day, that's the day to make introductions to their team members and make it a very warm welcome. Make them feel like they belong there already. Like make a welcome basket for them. Give them something with the organization's logo on it. Like I would get a coffee mug with my company's logo on it. Welcome baskets are always nice when you start a new job, and they don't really cost too much to make. But I don't think I can emphasize enough how important it is to socialize that new employee right away. Everyone always says your coworkers make or break a job, and a lot of people who've worked in really bad places say they stayed longer because of their coworkers, and they love their coworkers, and they made their days bearable. People who aren't friends with their coworkers, you don't really have to be friends with all of your coworkers, but people who aren't around friendly coworkers, they leave the job much quicker. In my last job, I was a front desk receptionist, and most of the people who worked in that company were in the back, like in the call center, like in the back office, and I was in the front. I was the only one in the front. So it was very hard to socialize with everyone on a regular basis because I was always up there and everybody else was always somewhere else. And I'm also very introverted too, so it's especially hard for me to socialize with a lot of people. And it's very important to consider the introverted or shyer employees in socializing them with other coworkers. They can have a harder time making connections. That's okay, but that's why you gotta facilitate the socializing, because it's not that we don't want to make friends. It's just that we need like a little extra help. And when we do make friends and we do become close to people, we feel great. And we want to feel great at work. We want to come to work with great people. So the socialization aspect on the first day or the first week is very important in the onboarding process. So we got the first day done, we got the first few days done, and now they've been there for about a week. By the end of this first week, they should have met their key team members, and they should be on track on their training. And it's a good idea to schedule a follow-up meeting with the new hire at the end of the week to, gauge how they're feeling, to check in with how they're doing in their training, and to answer any questions they might have at the end of the week. So let's say now their first month is done. By the end of the first month, they should have had meaningful projects assigned to them. Like ones that aren't too difficult for someone just coming in, but ones that can build that employee's confidence, that make them say like, oh, I did this. I feel this sense of accomplishment doing this. And I feel like now that I did these projects are right for me. And this job is right for me. It's very important to get that employee feeling that sense of accomplishment, because if they never feel a real sense of accomplishment in what they're doing, they're going to think, oh, this job isn't for me. I'm going to leave this organization and find something else. And feeling like you have a sense of accomplishment and purpose in your job is an important factor to employee engagement. And employee engagement leads to employee retention. So when they're done with their first month and they're done with those projects that you assigned them, follow up with them again, have another one-on-one meeting, and give them meaningful feedback. Tell them what they did really well, and tell them what they could improve and what they can work on. With feedback, you need to be very clear about it, and you need to have a very clear plan on how that employee can improve. Giving them clear feedback, again, takes away the uncertainty, and it lets the employee know exactly what you want. It lets them know exactly what they need to be doing, whether or not they're on track, and that takes away any anxiety they have. Like how I talked about uncertainty, if they're uncertain about their performance, they're going to have anxiety about it. So giving feedback and giving regular feedback is very important to an employee. And now let's say the employee reached their first 90 days. Once you hit that milestone, it's important to keep checking in on the employee, keep having one-on-one meetings. I keep saying that, but it's very important. In a few jobs that I worked at, I never really got a lot of one-on-one meetings with my managers or supervisors, and that's something I would really have liked to have. And after the first 90 days, I would ask the employee for feedback. How was their onboarding process? Was the process smooth for them? What could be improved? How do they like working there? And, take note of what they say. Any feedback they have, write that down and incorporate that into the onboarding process. I remember my boyfriend said recently that it would be a good idea if anyone has questions about an onboarding process that I should write that down and integrate that into the process. Because if somebody has questions about something, then other people are probably going to have questions about it too. So I thought that was very good advice. So now that we covered the first 90 days, let's talk about important things to consider when designing an onboarding process. Something to keep in mind is personalization. You're going to want to personalize each onboarding process for each new hire. Every employee is going to be different. So you have to tailor that onboarding process to their specific role and their specific background and previous work experience and their department, and that can make a really big difference. Going back to my boyfriend again, he works in healthcare, but he's actually on the IT side of things. So he works remotely, he never goes into the place, but they made him get all these vaccinations anyway. He was very happy to get vaccinated, but it really seems like they took their onboarding process for everyone who works in the hospital and just applied it to everyone, no matter if they worked in the hospital or not. So if you tailor an onboarding process specifically to that new hire's needs and what their specific job is, it will make a big difference to them, because it makes them feel like, oh, they actually care about me. They're thinking about what I need. They're thinking about me as an individual. They don't have an onboarding process that they just use for everyone. And I really feel like I'm being catered to as an individual. And that would really help their perception of the company and, of course, whether or not they're going to stay for very long. Another really good idea and something to keep in mind when designing the onboarding process is to make a buddy or mentor system. So when the new hire comes in, they can be assigned a mentor or a buddy to help them get acclimated to their job and the company. And of course, that's also really helpful for socialization, and it's very helpful in developing their career. Because if you have a mentor that's already very ahead in their career path and you're on the same career path and you want to learn from them, you're going to learn a lot from them. And you're going to learn a lot more about your career and how to succeed in that career from your mentor than someone who doesn't have a mentor. So mentors are very important for socialization, giving them a feeling of belonging, and helping the new hire develop their career. Now let's talk about some common pitfalls regarding onboarding. So common mistakes can include overwhelming new hires with too much information too soon. When you overload someone with so much information, they're not going to retain a lot of it because it's so much to process. You really have to spread the information out day by day. You can't really just throw everything on them on the very first day. Spread the information out throughout the week, spread the information out throughout a couple of weeks, and it's a lot easier for the new hire to digest everything. Also, I've heard that it's more challenging to onboard somebody well when somebody's working remotely. But I think that you just kind of do the same thing, but it's just remote and over a video chat. It's harder to socialize the person when they're not in the exact same room as everyone. But, just schedule a Zoom call with all the team members and have a Zoom meet and greet with everyone. And keep checking in. Just keep checking in with the new hire through Teams, through Zoom. Keep scheduling those one-on-one virtual meetings and everything should be fine. So I've just given you a crash course in employee onboarding. And we've covered a lot today, so to wrap up, we talked about the significance of onboarding and the best practices, the timeline of the first 90 days, and common pitfalls. And a big takeaway from this is that effective onboarding isn't just about welcoming someone on their first day. It's about setting them up for long-term success within their career and within your organization. If you really want to retain top talent, then investing in your onboarding process is crucial. It's a long-term thing, but it pays off in the end because employees who have positive onboarding experiences are way more likely to stay with your company, and your organization is going to significantly increase its employee retention, which will significantly help with recruiting costs. Before we go today, I'd love to hear from you, the audience, what your best onboarding experiences were like and what your worst onboarding experiences were like. So you can send your stories over to me and I'll read them on the next podcast. So thank you for tuning in to my very first podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and please don't hesitate to reach out with your questions or suggestions for other episodes. So take care, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye!